Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app. Go ahead. Sirius XM Channel 8 as well as ESPN2. He's Jay Williams and Freddie Coleman in for the boys today. If people could only hear stuff behind the scenes, that's all I'm going to say about that. But speaking of being in front of the scenes, Jodeci, we don't know when they're going to reunite. The Devontae Swing brothers over there, and then Casey and JoJo over there. But it seems like we could be getting a type of reunion. That seems like likely it's going to happen, Jay Will, when it comes to Kyrie Irving and LeBron James. Could happen in LA.
He was right. He was right.
Yeah, he was right. Got to give him credit for that one. But do we really need that kind of reunion in our lives with both of those? So we talk about KD going back to the Warriors, which you don't think is likely to happen. This seems more likely that this is going to happen, that these two are going to play in the same court once again.
One of the things I was laughing about with my boys over the weekend, Freddie, is that a lot of people that I know that have been on air, that call me up, GMs I hear talk about sports, the things I've heard about Kyrie Irving over the last several years have been beside me, right? Like, well, he burns down franchises. Like,
which is not true.
Look what happened in Cleveland, and it didn't work out between him and Bron, and they made amends, but then he goes to Boston. And look what happens to Boston. Now Boston's back in the world championship. Jason Tatum's better for the relationship, but, he left that in shambles. Now, look, he leads again with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, look, he's the main culprit and the reason why this happened. But you know what? It's going to work when he goes to L.A. I'm like, what makes you think it's going to work now all of a sudden? The same people that I've been saying for the longest that he is the guy burning down franchises. Now you're telling me that he can go out to L.A. and all of a sudden now it's going to work because LeBron James is there. Now, look, I think LeBron James and him are extremely compatible. I think they're more compatible than KD and Kyrie because of how you can put them in pick and rolls, because how they can play off each other, because of LeBron is such an incredible facilitator. It allows Kyrie to play off the ball. James Harden was able to do that a lot more with Brooklyn because KD and Kyrie could focus on scoring, whereas LeBron, as a playmaker with AD and with Kyrie, the way they can involve them in pick and rolls, the floor spacing, like I like the way that looks. That's a lot to bring to the table for LeBron James. That's a lot to manage.
Well, to me, it's a lot for Kyrie Irving because he's going to have to do something that he has never really wanted to do, and that is really take that back seat. Because to me, Kyrie Irving firmly believes he can lead a championship team as a leader. He tried it in Boston, and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum said, hey, take a good look at us. You're not going to talk to us that way. And with the whole Brooklyn saga, because that's what that is. I don't care if you call it colossal affair, whatever it is, Jay Will. He wanted to be the leader, or Kevin Durant thought he could cede that to him, and it just didn't work out for whatever reason. So now you're going to ask, or Kyrie has to ask himself, do I want to do this? Because there's no question he will not be even in the leadership capacity when it comes to that organization, as long as LeBron is still going to be there. Can he do that at this point in his life and at this point in his career?
I think he can. I mean, first off, for Brooklyn, I'm not worried about the Kyrie Irving trade yet. I'm worried about finding a location for KD and then figuring out what I need on the Kyrie aspect.
Because that needs to happen first.
Exactly. I feel like the KD thing has to. If you're asking me to rank KD, then Kyrie. But at the same time, if you're Kyrie, you get a chance to play with LeBron James in Los Angeles if they are able to get the deal done.
It's tough, isn't it? Because you're trying to weigh past, present, and future.
Because, Freddie, I'm going to tell you, as a basketball player, I've watched highlights of Kyrie all the time. It's one of the most special gifts the game of basketball has ever seen.
No doubt.
It's so uniquely different than anything I've ever seen throughout my 40 years of watching basketball. And I'm a hoops junkie.
Because he can score on anybody. Big, tall, short, doesn't matter.
And I think with a strong personality to help him lead, I think there's a chance for that to be a really incredible situation. But that needs to be a series of conversations with LeBron. And I can you imagine, though, if that trade does go down and Kyrie and LeBron are able to win a championship, does that make you look at KD differently? With the way LeBron James has been able to lead, if he's able to get it done, right, with a guy like Kyrie, you have to look back retrospectively on the KD situation and say, what aspects were missing from that relationship that LeBron was able to bring to the table more so than what KD was able to bring to the table?
I'm glad you brought that up. Jay Williams, Freddie Cohen, part of Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, because I said last week when Kevin Durant made his intentions known to the Brooklyn Nets about he didn't want to be a part of that, my first question was, what exactly are you looking for if you're Kevin Durant? Because anywhere you've gone, they've given you, especially what they believed you wanted, or placated you from that standpoint. Oklahoma City, Golden State Warriors, now the Brooklyn Nets. And yet, at a certain point, unhappiness wound up happening with Kevin Durant outside of the basketball court. I give him credit that he chose a friendship when it comes to Kyrie Irving, and he said, if you're not going to support my friend, then why should I support you? For whatever reason that was. But I still come back to that question, Jay Will. What exactly is Kevin Durant looking for that's going to satisfy him? Because apparently he hasn't found it yet, despite having 2 rings.
It's like Hamilton. You ever seen Hamilton? Like Alexander Hamilton? Like it's never enough, right?
True.
Like some people, it's never enough.
That's a good comparison.
And I think for KD, well, the thing that was interesting about him requesting the trade was I was like, okay, well, that makes it apparent that you came there because of Kyrie, because Key and I talked about this on the phone that day it happened. I was like, man, that's where you stay your ass right there in Brooklyn. I'm like, yo, this is mine. I may have came here. You may have been one of the main reasons I came here, but I'm going to stay here and we're going to build off. We're going to work it through. So now you're like, what team can he go to? And it's about winning chips. And James Still, our producer, and I were talking about this. I'm like, yeah, but there's something to be said about you doing something your way. Now, I know this is his version of his way.
Yes.
But what comes along with that is we look at the greatest players in the game of basketball as they're leaders, right?
Supposed to.
Yeah. I mean, go through them. Kobe, Shaq, MJ, Bron, all these guys, leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're saying with Kevin Durant, basketball-wise, you're off the chart. And you probably will get more championships, but will people ultimately question your leadership abilities?
Because you can be the best player on the team, but you don't have to be a leader. Sometimes those things can work. Works more in football. The great San Francisco 49ers teams all those years, Joe Montana's their best player, but their leaders were Ronnie Lott, people like that. When the New York Giants won their first Super Bowl, Eli Manning had to be their best player, but their leaders were Michael Strahan, Justin Tuck, guys like that. That can happen more in football. It's different in basketball because, to your point, we look at those things throughout history. Bill Russell and the Celtics, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at the Lakers in the 70s. Then in the 80s when you had with the Magic Johnson and the Lakers, even though Kareem was the best player, Magic Johnson was the leader, then Magic Johnson became the best player and became the leader of that basketball team. It has to happen to me more in basketball because they look to you because you're supposed to be the face of the franchise. You're the first face that they see, the first voice that they hear. And from my standpoint, Jay Will, Kevin Durant doesn't want to do that. And that's fine. But then you can't try to accept the responsibility. And then when things, and you mentioned this to me last night, that when things go haywire, he runs away from stuff like this. You told me this.
You got to run towards it. How do you deal with confrontation? You got to run towards confrontation. And, Frank Isola came on, was talking about, tweeting people anonymously. Like, yeah, but when there's personal confrontation, how do you handle that? And everybody's different when it comes to that. But I know how LeBron will handle head-on confrontation. He'll deal with it directly.
Not for nothing. We know how Kyrie would handle it compared to Kevin Durant. I'm not trying to cast aspersions at Kevin Durant. I just go by the intel that's been put in front of us. And you made that point last night. Anytime that has happened, he has run the other way.
And sometimes by not saying anything says everything.
We're not saying. We're just saying. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving have been dominant in the headlines. This not-so-perfect pair is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Thanks for joining us. Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. Jay Williams over here. Freddie Coleman over here. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. We're going to use the number 5 and WWJD. What would Jay do when it comes to NBA free agency? That's if he tells you about this from O'Reilly.
O'Reilly Auto Parts is here to keep your car on the road with the right parts. Advice from the professional parts people and their free loaner tool program. There's no need to purchase a tool if you're only going to use it once. Your local O'Reilly Auto Parts store has more than 80 specialty tools available to rent for your next repair. Refundable deposit required at the time of rental. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today and ask about their free loaner tool program or visit O'ReillyAuto.com.
Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max.
Wait until you hear what one of our insiders says about a two-time All-Star looking for a Supermax. You guys already have a Supermax. Here I am. Huh? No good?